In the video lecture this week, we're going to focus on two topics: causality and difference in differences. Things I want you to be able to take away from this week's course material are the following. First, I want you to be comfortable thinking about the differences and explaining the differences between correlation, so patterns in data, and causation, whether that pattern is because one thing caused the other. Once we've built up some knowledge on that, we're going to think about the difference between regression assumptions. So if we want to run a linear regression for our analytics, and causal assumptions. So that's going to be thinking about, if we run a regression, what does that mean? How do we interpret the regression coefficients? And when would we feel comfortable making causal claims about regression coefficients? So again, when can we use a regression to think about whether something on the right-hand side of the regression caused something on the left-hand side? We're then going to think about one particular way that's going to help us to make causal claims, which are going to be what we're going to think of as experiments. And we're going to think about randomized controlled trials as one form of experiment. And then the idea of a natural experiment or a quasi-experiment, kind of two words for very similar things or the same thing, and see why they might be useful to us as marketing analysts. And then once we have that experimental data, we're going to say, okay, how can we estimate causal effects from it? And we're going to introduce the notion of difference in differences as a way of estimating causal effects of some experiment on an outcome variable of interest. We'll think about how to estimate that difference in differences. So how can we compute the size of the experiment's change in the outcome of interest, both using kind of differences in mean outcomes across different splits of our data, and also then extending that to the notion of regression. Finally, we'll reflect a little bit about whether that difference in differences thing that we just computed lets us really make causal claims from the estimates that we just computed. So when does difference in difference estimation really mean causality? And when can we interpret the magnitude of that effect really firmly as a causal claim?